World's biggest jailer of journalists. China, North Korea dominate the bottom of Press Freedom Index. U.S. Ambassador to China. U.S. concern over China's punitive actions against American firms. As China heralds confidence, it restricts financial databases from foreign access. Prelude to a social explosion. 1 in 5 young people in China is unemployed.
Reporters Without Borders, RSF, released its 21 edition of the Global Press Freedom Index on May 3rd, showing that China and North Korea stand together at the very bottom ranks. Citing the edition, Bloomberg reports that China is ranked 179th, one spot ahead of North Korea. China fell 4 places on the World Press Freedom Index. RFS describes this nation as the world's biggest jailer of journalists and one of the biggest exporters of propaganda content. The organization also shows no surprise when North Korea takes the prize at the bottom. Vietnam, which has almost completed its hunt of independent reporters and commentators, is also relegated to the last 3 places. By contrast, Norway, Ireland, and Denmark have topped the rankings. The U.S. experienced a drop of 3 spots to 45. This negative trend, according to RSF, is due to the murders of Las Vegas Review Journal's Jeff German in September 2022 and Spectrum News 13's Dylan Lyons in February 2023. RSF Secretary General Christophe Delory said the index presents enormous volatility in the state of journalism, with significant rises and falls and unprecedented changes. For example, Brazil's 18th place rise and Senegal's 31st place fall. Delory added, "This instability is the result of increased aggressiveness on the part of the authorities in many countries and growing animosity towards journalists on social media and in the physical world." To honor World Press Freedom Day, the Paris-based advocacy group released the World Press Freedom Index, which evaluates the environment of journalism in 180 nations and territories. RSF has adapted a quantitative tally of abuses against media outlets and journalists, as well as a qualitative analysis based on a questionnaire delivered to hundreds of press freedom experts.
The U.S. has expressed concern over the Chinese Communist regime's recent actions against some American businesses operating in the country. According to Nicholas Burns, the U.S. ambassador to China, these actions are punitive and create a hostile environment for foreign investment. Foreign businesses in China are concerned about the increase of China's exit ban and new counter-espionage law, which prohibits the transfer of any national security-related information and broadens the definition of spying. Reuters reported that during his talk with the Stimson Center think tank in Washington on Tuesday, May 2nd, via video link, Burns said that the law could put academic researchers, professors, and journalists at risk, as well as criminalize everyday activities before companies can make business decisions. The Chinese regime has recently raided U.S. companies in China. In late March, Mintz Group, a U.S. corporate due diligence firm, had their Beijing office raided, and 5 local staff were detained. Last week, police visited a U.S. management consultancy, Bain & Co.'s Shanghai office, and questioned some of its employees. The Chinese regime's cybersecurity watchdog also reviewed products of Micron Technology Inc., a U.S. memory chip manufacturer, amid sweeping U.S. measures to cut off Chinese access to cutting-edge chip technology. Burns signaled that he intends to have a full discussion with the Chinese regime about the issue. Burns said, "We think American businesses here ought to be free of intimidation from the government, and they shouldn't be targeted mainly because there are political differences and competitive differences in the U.S.-China relationship." Burns added that many foreign firms would only make major investments in China once they could see consistency in messaging from Beijing. Burns' remark came days after the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, a leading business lobby group, issued a statement warning of the rising risk of doing business in China, as the Beijing regime has dramatically increased scrutiny of American companies, saying it is a matter of serious concern for the investor community.
China is limiting access to its economic and financial databases in another move that further sabotages its efforts to reinvigorate investor confidence. According to the Wall Street Journal, WSJ, China's largest data provider, Wind Information, is among those taking it slow on renewing subscriptions to a range of overseas think tanks, research firms, and other non-financial entities. Wind reportedly cited compliance problems as the reason. However, when the WSJ inquired, a representative gave a vague reply, saying customers should connect with their account managers to renew contracts. Outside of that, the WSJ reported that other Chinese databases, from academic ones like China National Knowledge Infrastructure to corporate ones like Tian Yancha and Chichacha, have also become much less accessible from overseas. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, has introduced more data regulations since 2016 that cite national security. On April 26th, it passed a wide-ranging update of its counter-espionage law, which stated that authorities could access data, electronic equipment, and personal property information and prevent border crossings amid a probe. Gerard de Pippo, a China expert at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, said, "On the grounds of national security, foreign access to various databases has been restricted." He continued, "The net effect will be less to improve China's national security and more to isolate China from overseas researchers trying to understand the country." According to WSJ, the bill also stirred concerns among business executives who said that its opaque definition could criminalize any business operation, such as gathering intelligence on local markets and business partners. The database restrictions, which should have allowed foreign investors to evaluate China's risks, also happen as more Western management consultants and auditors are increasingly targeted by CCP authorities. Examples are the raids on American consulting firm Bain & Company, due diligence firm Mintz Group, and police visits at Capvision. Gary Reichel, who has over 30 years of experience as a venture capitalist in China, said, "The harder the government, CCP, makes it to understand China, by definition, that will make the Chinese market less attractive to capital, especially long-term commitments." After years of economic growth, the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, is beginning to show the fragility on which it founded its model. China never managed to recover from the efforts of the pandemic and is now beset by the financial crisis, the flight of international firms leaving the country for better places, and the trade war with the United States. The direct consequence of this mismatch became evident after confirmation that 19.6% of Chinese youth are unemployed, which could lead to a major social explosion. The CCP's National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, reported the number of unemployed. Given its history of lies and manipulation of information, there is speculation that the number could be even more alarming than stated. Moreover, given China's university calendar, it is expected that several million young people will graduate and seek employment over the next few months. CCP officials have commented on the complex problem, taking the issue on board and issuing vague promises of welfare for the unemployed and claiming to be working to regain the market's confidence. As China's youth unemployment rate rises, Guangdong, the country's most prosperous province, has offered a highly controversial solution, sending hundreds of thousands of unemployed youth to the countryside for 2 to 3 years to find work. During a speech last December, CCP leader Xi Jinping called for revitalizing the rural economy, trying to encourage young people to return to work in the countryside. These measures inevitably bring to mind Mao Zedong's painful years in power when he forced millions of urban youth to leave the cities and took them to rural areas to work in harsh conditions. Many analysts are already claiming that, as in other leftist dictatorships, the youth could be the DNA of the end of the CCP. Dispersing the youth to rural areas seems to fit right in the CCP's interests of keeping its biggest detractors from being concentrated in the big cities. China's education system has done everything to indoctrinate children and young people in favor of the CCP. But now they face a growing mismatch between their expectations and real opportunities as the economy slows significantly. Frustrations with growing uncertainties and lack of social mobility are rising. Young people are increasingly losing hope that a college degree can generate overcoming effects, and discontent is growing as the only solution seems to be a manual labor job. In November 2022, thousands of demonstrators, the vast majority of whom were young, protested in several Chinese cities against the CCP and its zero-COVID strategy. Some even dared to call for Xi's ousting openly. At that time, the CCP managed to calm the demonstrations by giving in to the demands and reversing the unbearable lockdown policies. But was the social unrest eliminated, or was a flame of a volcano about to explode extinguished?